This is our A2 mobility series, building off of the drills we did with the A1 series. You'll see some repeats and a lot of new stuff progressing some of the movements. So the first cycle of exercises looks like this. We do our inside-outside straight calf raises. So feet turned in for 10, driving through the ball of that big toe, nice and controlled through the range of motion. So 10 feet turned in, 10 with your feet turned out, still driving through the ball of that big toe, and then 10 with your feet straight ahead. Get a nice rhythm going, always drive through the ball of that big toe, warm up the calves and the ankle complex. The second thing we'll do is an inside squat. This is going to look a little unusual, but we're trying to build a little bit of strength and a little bit of mobility through the knee and the ankle joint. So taking about a shoulder width or maybe slightly wider than shoulder width stance, we're going to come down into a squat, collapsing the knees and ankles in. This is very strange for a traditional strength training program, but if we're doing it correctly, we should be conditioning the tissue in the knee and the ankle without giving it too much load. If you go too wide, it's not gonna work. We have too much collapse through the knees. If you go too narrow, we can't get deep enough into the movement. So you want about a shoulder width and a half, coming down and up. From the side view, staying nice and tall through the torso, and we shoot for 10 reps. After that, we've got our wide stance good mornings. Fairly wide stance, about 1.5 to 2 times shoulder width. We can go hands to the temples, push the hips back, up nice and tall, squeeze the glutes. Hips back, up nice and tall, squeeze the glutes. Should keep a nice and neutral spine and get a good stretch to those hamstrings. 10 reps there. Next we have helicopter rotation. So again, nice neutral spine, drive the hips back, just about parallel to the floor, and rotate each direction 10 times. Get a good exhale, shoulder, arm, and head all rotating up towards the ceiling. Should feel some tension and a stretch through the thoracic spine. And the last one for our first series is dowel overhead extension. This should look familiar. We go hands wide with the dowel, big shrug as you go overhead, elbows stay straight through the whole movement, big shrug as you come forward. Should feel a little bit of a stretch, no pain, no strain. If you need more of a stretch, as always, you can walk the hands in a little bit. And if we want to play around with this, we can do 5 reps with a regular starting position. We can do 5 reps from a dorsal position just to get a little variety. So we go bar behind the back, palms facing forward. You'll need to start a little on the wide side. Come all the way overhead. You're going to get some rotation through your wrist and forearm and all the way back. Very similar to starting on the front side. We just get a little bit of a different stretch through the arm. So you can do 5 starting in our normal position and then 5 from the dorsal position. So that's our first circuit. Calf raise, inside squats, wide stance good mornings, helicopter torso rotation, and dowel overhead extension. 10 reps for each of those. Only go through them once. Now we'll get to our second rotation. We go more from bilateral to unilateral movements. So we do a single leg calf raise. You may want a little something to balance. Coming onto one foot, and we'll do a single leg calf raise, 10 on each side. Same principles apply. Full range of motion, drive through the ball of the big toe, nice and controlled. So you get 10 on the right, 10 on the left. Side lunges, which should look familiar. Getting some nice length in those adductors. As I'm going to the side now, I'm going to shift to my right side. What I'm trying to do is pull my right hip to the right so I get just a little bit more stretch through my left adductors, and vice versa when I go to the other side. I don't need a super wide stance on this one. I can have a moderately wide stance, but just the fact that I'm trying to shift my hip over will lengthen those adductors. 10 on each side there. Next, we're going to do a long stance lunge. And if you have access to it, a few inches of a step will add a little more range of motion. So we go front foot on the step, back foot comes with a nice long stride. I'm driving this front knee forward, which is going to lengthen the hip flexors and quad. Drive this knee forward, almost like I'm going into a front split. My back knee will stay relatively straight here. We'll go 10 times. Again, no pain, no strain, just a nice stretch. After you hit 10, we'll go to the other side. Really embrace that bottom position. Drive the front knee forward, feel the length of the back leg through the hip flexors and quads. It's almost like you're using your musculature to pull yourself down into position. The next one is an RDL with a hip rotation. Here's what it looks like. I'm going to plant my left foot. I have a little bit of balance. You can use a table, a chair, whatever you like, on my left side. I come into an RDL with my right leg extending back. So at this point, I should be one straight line from heel to head, parallel to the ground. Now what I'm going to do is take that right hip and rotate it up and back down. So I'm working on some hip horizontal abduction, adduction. If I show the same thing from the other side, it's this left hip that's doing the work here. Nice and controlled. 10 on the left, 10 on the right. The last one we have is called a Xiao Ping, another gymnastics strength training exercise. So you'll want to grab something that weighs somewhere between 3 and 7 pounds. You could use a dumbbell, you could use a weighted ball like this. If you're at home, you could use a heavy book, you could use a big water bottle, you could use a handle of vodka, whatever you have lying around. And we're going into a big circular rotation. So I start with my palm forward, I rotate up, and then it's a 365-degree turn and control back down, making as big of a circle as I can. You may have a little torso rotation as you go, but we don't want too much in there. We want to focus on that shoulder joint. 5 going forward, then we reverse the movement. 5 going backward. Really work on this position right here where you're behind you. Work on opening up that shoulder joint. 5 forward, 5 back, and then you can switch sides. Big circle, shrug at the top, turn that arm, nice and controlled. 5 forward, 5 backwards. So we do one single round of those exercises. The single leg calf raise, the side to side lunge, the long stance lunge, the RDL with the hip rotation, and the Xiao Pings. And that is your A2 mobility series.